Point Break tells the story of Johnny Utah, played by Keanu Reeves, a young, hotshot FBI agent who is assigned to track down a gang of LA bank robbers, whom have the distinct trait of wearing rubber masks of some of the ex-presidents. Utah's partner, Angelo Pappas, played by Gary Busey, tells him that he believes that the ex-presidents are surfers, so Utah goes undercover in the surfy subculture to try and track down the criminals, and along the way forms a relationship with fellow surfy Tyler, played by Lori Petty, where he meets surfing guru Bodhi, played by Patrick Swayze, who sees surfing as being something spiritual, a way of reaching his ultimate nirvana of the soul, who also seems to be a prodigy with the surf, with his ultimate dream of surfing a wave during the 50-year storm. Utah and Bodhi develop a high-octane bromance, but at a dangerous cost, as Utah struggles between being an FBI agent and also being inspired and spiritually awakened by the surfy lifestyle in this energetic surf action movie about betrayal and how far you would go for those you care about, and drawing the line between doing your duty and what feels spiritually right. Okay guys, time to get out the sex wax and rub it on your surfboards for attraction. Today we are exploring 10 things that you may not know about Point Break, the ultimate undercover cop surf movie. The movie that proved that Keanu Reeves had a lot more to offer other than being Ted Theodore Logan. And of course the movie that showed us just how terrifying them weird Ronald Reagan rubber masks are. Ugh. Let's do this now!
Utah, give me 2.
Little hand says it's time to rock and roll.
Number 10. Originally, the movie was going to be about skateboarding. In its time, Point Break was kind of like an FBI action movie with a twist, in that it was crossing over action movies with the surfy subculture, which was big in the early 90s. The surfing aspects helps the movie, and is what makes it unique, as one of the most appealing aspects of Point Break is the surf aspect. There are many shots of some great surfing taking place. The crashing of the waves can also be a reflection on Johnny Utah's inner turmoil. And also all the surfing adds to the mystical spirituality of the movie. However, it nearly wasn't like this. At one stage in the movie's production, the ex-presidents were in fact going to be skateboarders, another subculture that was big in the early 90s. But I don't know, that just would have been weird. I just don't know how I would have felt about Patrick Swayze going around on a skateboard. Number 9. Alternative titles. Point Break is actually a surfy terminology, basically meaning when a wave breaks and hits the land. It's an interesting title considering not many movie audiences would have been up to speed with the surfy jargon. However, the movie originally had the more simplistic title of being just called Johnny Utah, which, although I think is a great name for the character, probably wouldn't have worked as a movie title, as it doesn't really say anything about the movie. That and the movie is just as much Bodhi's story than it is Johnny's. When the movie went into production, it was then titled to Riders of the Storm, based off the 1971 Doors song, which would have made sense as the use of the word storm could be a reference to the 50-year storm. And Bodhi was indeed going to ride it. However, it was decided that the song itself had nothing to do with the events of the movie, so it was only surprisingly halfway through shooting that the movie got the name Point Break.
Man, LA has changed a lot during that time. The air got dirty and the sex got clean.
Number 8. Alternative casting for Johnny Utah. Although Keanu Reeves brought a lot into the role of Johnny Utah, including his love for athletics and sports, he wasn't the first choice for the role.
Hi, Johnny Utah.
Before Reeves landed the part, actors considered for the role of the young FBI agent include Charlie Sheen, Val Kilmer, Johnny Depp, and Matthew Broderick. Yeah, no joke, Ferris Bueller himself, Matthew Broderick. And even Patrick Swayze read for the part of Johnny, but when he read the script, he wanted to play the part of Bodhi, as that's the part that he related to the most, which led him to being cast in that role. Keanu Reeves eventually landed the part, who at the time was best known for his role as Ted in the time-traveling comedy Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. And Point Break really took Reeves out of that teenage airhead image he was stuck with after Bill and Ted, and propelled him as an action star, paving the way for future action films he would go on to star in, including Speed and The Matrix and John Wick series. Speaking of cast, Red Hot Chili Peppers frontman Anthony Kiedis plays surfy thug Tone. Well, if Flea could be in Back to the Future, then he could be in Point Break. Number 7. Preparation for the surfing. Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves and Lori Petty all had to take surfing lessons in Hawaii before filming took place, in order to prepare them for the minor close-up scenes of them surfing. However, it clearly wasn't enough practice, as while filming a surfing scene, Patrick Swayze broke 4 of his ribs, which is probably why pretty much all of his surfing scenes you can clearly see it's a stunt double. Number 6. The end of the movie doesn't take place in Australia. Throughout Point Break, Bodhi has a prophecy that he will find his ultimate wave and thus ultimate fulfillment when he rides the mystical 50-year storm, which is to take place at Bells Beach, Australia. Bells Beach is a real beach located in Victoria. However, the movie wasn't filmed there. Instead, a beach in Oregon stood in for the Aussie beach. You can tell that by the way the so-called Australian actors are saying, "Are you crazy, man? You can't go out there, you gotta go back!" I think it's a shame that the movie didn't actually end up in the place that has been mentioned throughout the entire film. But it is what it is. And so, for a short period of time during filming, this beach in Oregon became Bells Beach, Australia. Number 5. James Cameron produced the movie. Yeah, James Cameron, as in Terminator and Titanic James Cameron. There is a long history with how he got involved in the project. Basically, the movie went into production in 1987, with movie giant Ridley Scott attached on board to direct. But producers backed out as they lost the rights to the script, so it was shelved. Then jumped to 1991 and James Cameron got on board because he was looking for a script for his then wife Kathryn Bigelow to direct. She had previously directed Near Dark and Blue Steel and was keen for her next project. Cameron found the Point Break script and thought it was just the right directional project for his spouse. And to be fair, Bigelow as a director does a really good job in the movie and has a great director's eye. Sadly, Bigelow and Cameron ended up getting a divorce not too long after the movie's production. But Bigelow would go on to direct Strange Days, The Hurt Locker and Dark 30. Number 4. Inspiration of the story. Co-producer Rick King came up with the basics of the story one day when he visited a beach, and while enjoying the sun and fun, he read an article in the LA Weekly about a bank robbery, and given the beach scenery, he daydreamed the idea of the FBI infiltrating a surfy gang who robs banks just so they can continue their fun, carefree lifestyle. And just like that, the basic story of Point Break was born. However, there are also claims that the movie is loosely based on the Ken Nunn novel, Tapping the Source. Published in 1984, it tells the story of Ike Tucker, who embarks on the surfy hangout scene in order to try and find out who killed his sister, in which he gets engulfed in the culture of partying, drugs, and violence. And interestingly enough, Point Break isn't the only movie to feature robbers wearing ex-president masks. The 1987 movie Bestseller starts with a scene with a bunch of criminals wearing Richard Nixon masks stealing police evidence from a storage unit. Weird. Number 3. Swayze couldn't take part in the on-foot chase scene. Halfway through the movie, there is a mad and epic on-foot chase scene where the Johnny Utah character chases down Bodhi in his Ronald Reagan bank robbing gear through the back streets of LA. This is one intense scene that holds no bar, and you can tell watching this that Keanu Reeves physically goes all out and runs his ass off. However, Patrick Swayze didn't take part in the scene, despite the fact it's a chase scene involving his character. It is in fact a stunt double wearing the Reagan mask. But no, this wasn't because Swayze was lazy, that rhymes, and not because he couldn't be bothered to do all the running around, but because he was too busy in Europe promoting the movie Ghost. You know, that movie where Swayze, becomes a ghost. So I guess by convenience it was decided to film the scene which doesn't require seeing Swayze's face, while he was temporarily out of the picture. Isn't that always the way? You go to partake in a foot chase while wearing a Ronald Reagan mask, but instead you've got to go to Europe to talk about the time that Willie Lopez killed you in an alleyway. Typical. Number 2. The inspiration for Johnny Utah's name. The character Johnny Utah got his name from the NFL quarterback Joe Montana, only Joe was changed to Johnny, and instead of Montana being the last name, Utah was used instead. So yeah, they just went with a different state. Either way, it's a great name, and in a curious case of life imitating art, the Johnny Utah character is a former quarterback who had to give up football due to an injury, which is very similar to Keanu Reeves, as he was a hockey player who also had to give up hockey due to an injury. Speaking of hockey, this isn't the only film to feature the talents of both Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves, as the two had previously starred in the 1986 hockey teenage sports drama Young Blood. Number 1. Point Break's Remakes. We all know the movie got remade in 2015 with an unnecessary and now forgotten remake. But that wasn't the only Point Break remake. There was also The Fast and the Furious, which if you watch carefully totally uses the Point Break template. Only it's not surfing, it's streetcar racing, with Paul Walker playing the Johnny Utah character, who is a cop undercover trying to infiltrate the car racing scene in order to try and stop some criminal thieves, and in doing so he meets Vin Diesel, who is like the Bodhi character, who is at Prodigy with what he does, in this case, drag street racing. And he also turns out to be part of the criminal operation, but the infiltration leaves the Walker character understanding the joy and spirituality of racing, as Utah does with surfing, and thus the undercover cop and criminal form a bromance. It's totally the story of Point Break all over again. In fact, I'm surprised there was no lawsuit. Okay guys, that was my look into Point Break, a truly awesome action movie of the early 90s. If you haven't seen this movie, I highly recommend it and couldn't recommend it enough. It's fast and exciting with plenty of adrenaline and poses some really interesting philosophies. Anyway, I'm Minty and I'm just going to go up the road to Bells Beach, Oregon. See ya!